Thank you very much, dear colleagues and friends, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I think that I will try to nail it down, the good practice concept today. I would say the most relevant issue and indicator, which is a participatory approach. Because participation, it's not just a right, but it's also a tool to address the trauma and to cope with the trauma and basically to create the sense of belonging. And that's why we decided that we will really look at the best practices through the lenses of participation and inclusion. And that means that we cooperated very well with the migration policy group, which helped us to develop this tool, which is quite easy to use, I must say, and we really tried to build this tool that could be user-friendly, that could be really easily usable, not only people with their PhDs, but by people who are working on the ground every single day with the refugees in a very simple language. And I'm very happy that we already managed to translate it with the support from the Estonian Ministry of Culture into Estonian language. So it's already now available in Estonian. And my job today is not just to present this tool in details and to drop it on the table and leave this place, but also to support the local practitioners in the longer run throughout 2024 to use this tool, because I think this is very important. We can have a lot of tools in our toolbox, but as long as they are standing there, I think it's not good. So our role is not just to present it, but also in a partnership with the stakeholders and local actors and national agencies to really capacitate local actors to work on this. And what does it mean? I think it all started in, I would say, even not, at the beginning of it started in 2018, but actually started in 2015-16 with the Syrian refugee situation, when the European Commission, UNHCR, OECD, whatever name it, they really, really heavily funded the integration projects and the programs. And it emerged around Europe in thousands, tens of thousands, modes and shapes and methodologies. And for us, it was, and everybody has been talking about the best practice as such, and for okay, what that means. I mean, before inviting Estonian integration actors to Finland, we need to identify what that best practice is. So basically, we said that we need that tool. But we just don't need that tool in a very technical sense, but also we need that tool in a holistic sense, with a very, very heavy focus on the participation. So that's where we are. So basically, we started, I think, negotiations with MPG in 2018, and actually now we are already piloted this tool in Finland and in some other countries, and now it is available already in 24, 25 languages, and we launched it with 11 ministries in our region as well, in Iceland, in Estonia, we will doing now, in Finland, and Latvia, and Lithuania. So basically, this is the tool which is step-by-step guide, and as well as communication materials to really, really help local practitioners to design, to monitor, and to evaluate practices. So this is not about the language training. This is not about the labor market inclusion. This is not about HPSS or coping with trauma, but it's more the holistic areas that gives you an understanding of what the minimum standard should be when you are developing the integration for refugees. And I think this is very, very, very relevant at the moment when we have the Ukrainian situation response, and there is a lot of funding coming from various sources, and that's why we thought that it might really be helpful for you to look at the very practical ways in a simple language what that means. And that means that we're also focusing not only on the development of new practices, but this tool could be used also for you to evaluate your existing practice. Yeah, you can run the Migrant and Refugee Center at the local level. You can build the city action plan on integration and inclusion. You can actually build the language training at the workplace concept, and that's what actually we can take this tool and use it. And that's what we done also with extensive consultation with many partners across Europe, also with the cooperation with the migration policy group. And I think what is very important for us here is that there are a lot of debates on what integration means, especially like people like we are with the PhDs and professors. We have been debating what is the difference between integration and inclusion. I think you can run this dialogue for ages, but what we try to do with this tool is we try to really translate it into the simple language and try to deconstruct the whole concept of integration. I will be telling you in 2 very simple pictures how it looks like from our side. So by deconstructing this integration, we really want to achieve the thing that we want to look at, how to address the asymmetric power relations with the participation. So this is basically about this tool. So what that tool entails. So it has a principal handbook, which is available in already now in Estonian. And that has that is the most conceptual part with the, I would say, 6 key areas. And those 6 key areas, I can just tell you, these are these. I will not go into details, yes, so we have those 6 areas, you will be able to read it in Estonian. But what is important that those 6 areas, they have also the interactive online version of the handbook, and that means that you can grow from those 6 areas and you can have a checklist. And then at the end, when you have the checklist, the online toolkit helps you to summarize the issues where you are standing, where do you stand in terms of your integration and in terms of those 6 key areas. And then later, you can use the scorecard, which is basically available online. And that scorecard is basically looks like this. It has 5 basically dimensions, and it's very easy to use. And this is where I did randomly, put my answers. Yeah? So basically, if you have the integration practice, you put there, your answers to the key questions, and then you're coming up with a certain results. And then you see, okay, I'm building my program, and with inclusivity and participation indicators, I'm 53 out of 100. That means I need to work more. And let's say in the sustainability indicators, I am 90% from 100. So perhaps this part is okay. So I am investing my resources in the other part where I'm still, not as strong as in another part. Yeah. So this is very, very practical, and that really helps you to shift your focus and shift your resources to the weakest place in your practice. Yeah. And that also very good tool for cooperation. Let's say if somebody in Tartu is building one-stop shop, and they do an evaluation, and somebody in Tallinn or in Helsinki builds the same and does the evaluation, and they can compare each other, and let's say, okay, hey guys, I'm really good in the 4th and the 5th dimension, but I'm bad in 1. Can we exchange the practices, and can we exchange, the knowledge of where are you strong and where are you, weaker? So this is where actually we try to build this tool. So all in all, it's a tool that it really helps you to translate the complex integration language and definitions into very practical terms. It has a practical checklist. It has a list also of good practices which have been evaluated by the same evaluation grid or the same scorecard. And then it actually gives you a very simple step-by-step questions. What exactly you have to do to reach that level? And if you are still not there, this scorecard really helps you to say, okay, this is where I still need to go further. And by looking at those 6 actually areas, they are quite similar what Alexander has indicated previously in his speech. But this is where, I think it's very important for the Estonian context as well. Yeah? Because when we say the complementarity in the Nordic integration model, it's easy. Because the integration is mainstreamed through the local level, either implemented by the national agencies at the local level or by the municipalities. Yeah? In the Baltic countries, where actually now with the Ukrainian response, we're moving towards the Nordic model, is a bit different because there is a centralized funding for the NGOs to do the integration work. Yeah? So the complementarity to the national efforts, it's totally different. It's much more complicated because you have 100 integration projects, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it all goes to one integration vision, which is set by the government. So, and by that complementarity, this is, what we mean. So what we try to do with this tool is also to contextualize a little bit more, what that practice at the local level means, and especially looking at the participatory techniques. So that's one very important element. Then the other important element is that, how we look at this is through the community-based protection, yeah? And, by saying that, integration is a two-way process, we cannot forget that, it's not just about linking the local populations to the migrant or refugee population, yeah? That's a very simple and technical thing, but that's a very passive thing. There is a question how to lift that participation to a natural and integral part of the cohesive society. And this is where this tool really helps to do that. Because without the participation and without, reducing the asymmetric power relations between minority and majority, you will never be able to reach the sense of belonging. And I'm pretty much sure that this is not just about the refugee issue. This might be the issue of the ethnic minorities that I think Professor has been also discussing this today. Yeah, and I think that for us as a UN Refugee Agency, it's always very important that refugees as a vulnerable group with a huge potential of trauma and PTSD, they should be part of the holistic and horizontal participatory approach and participatory techniques, because that's really, really helps not just to deal with the traumas, but to empower people. Because if you are a highly skilled migrant working in the IT sector, perhaps you don't care about that so much. But if you traumatize the participation and sense of belonging and really empowering a person to really take care of themselves, I think this is very, very important. So that's how we really frame these 6 areas. And they are quite simple. You will be able to look in Estonian language. You can see, there are bullet points. What should you do, how you should do, what practices already exist, and then you can, screen your practice through the scorecard. And that actually is very helpful for us as well as the UN Refugee Agency, because we act in this region as a facilitator, yeah? So by connecting, let's say, somebody of you with the Finnish authorities or Swedish authorities, we really need to understand, what do you need and where are your strongest and weakest part. And as soon as we know that, we can connect you to the strongest actors in the other countries. So for us, it's not only the tool for practitioners that we have developed it for you, but it's also very important for us as a network, as Alexander said, as a network opportunity and as a networking tool. Yeah, so I think this is very great. And remember, couple of weeks we had a conference here for the Pan-Baltic integration actors, and I was really amazed about how that important is when somebody from Vilnius comes here and looks, all right, guys, so you have a center. We don't have that kind of center in our country. We just have a soft landing system for the highly skilled migrants, but we don't have that for the refugees. I mean, so this is what actually, we also want to use this tool as a part of really building the network, especially now with the Ukrainian situation response. Yes, Ukrainian situation response. And I think this is why we'll try to really nail it down to why actually we do this. Because I don't want to sound very harsh here, but I've seen a lot of, in my, I don't know how many years, 15 years I have been working with integration, and I've seen a lot of cases when the integration or intercultural policy is developed by a middle-aged, white, educated person like me, without a feedback mechanism, yeah, without really addressing asymmetric power relations, yeah, with a really engaging refugees not only as a beneficiaries, as a passive beneficiaries of services, but as a proactive co-designers of integration policies that are basically targeting them. So this is basically the tool that we really want to, first of all, discuss with you, where do you stand on this ladder, and where do you really want to go? Because in many cases, we see that we are still at the first and at the second ladder. In some of the countries and in some of the cities, because it's very city-specific as well, we are somewhere on the fourth or even on the fifth ladder, but it takes time. That takes time, that takes energy, that takes resources, but that's the best way to go about to create a sense of belonging and ownership to your new country, to your new local community. And this is where I think we go a little bit beyond the dichotomy of integration as a two-way process, because we as a UNHCR also use this integration as a two-way process element, and that's, we know that for ages, that integration is a two-way process, yeah? But let's not overestimate that, because integration as a two-way process can happen at the first level, at the first step of the ladder. When they come to you, I inform you, you take the information and you go. So we are clicking the box that integration is a two-way process, but that's not enough, yeah? You can just click the box, but the whole issue is how you create this integration process by really, really addressing the power relations where the institution is here and who tells to the people that have to be integrated there. So as long as you have that power relation, then integration will never work. And we all know that, yeah, that somebody's coming from the top and bangs you and say, hey, look, you need to do that and that. No, I mean, that doesn't work. So for us, it's very important that participatory approach would be really holistic. It takes time, but you have to go step by step. And when you are really reaching the level of collaborating, then I think to really try to empower these people becomes easier. And and that's why I really try to talk about especially the forced migrants, yeah, the refugees and asylum seekers, because for these people, that empowerment it's really important, because they have never wanted to come to this country. Yeah, usually refugees they have never wanted to be here. The volunteer migrants they wanted to come to your country because they planned in ahead. Yeah, they got in advance the employment, the housing, apartment, the schooling, etc. Refugees they never wanted to come here. They wanted to stay in their countries. That's why they are refugees. And that's why we really need to work more on the participatory techniques. And instead of showing 100 reports on how that looks like, because it's very challenging to tell it in a few minutes, so I said I will show you a couple of pictures, which are quite self-explanatory, of course. So basically, on the left side, you have equality on paper. That's equality on paper. We call it equal opportunities. Yeah, it's in the law, it's very simple to identify what equal opportunities means. So if you go further, and we all know that there is a gap between policies and practices always, and I think that's what also MPG has been doing very well, by identifying those gaps, and I think that spring methodology can really help you to work on that gap. But what I'm trying to say here in the more conceptual framework, you go to equity and you try to, what to do is basically try to ensure the equal access to equal opportunities, yeah, which is totally different, yeah, because equal access is not enough. You really need to have equal opportunities to equal access. So that's where you go towards, by sometimes, working on this positive discrimination element, affirmative action, if I may say so, and all the other things which are perhaps targeting the most vulnerable groups, as we say, through the AGD approach, age, gender, diversity, disability, and sojourn, etc. But then there is a question if that is enough, because you are still looking through the wall, because you still have a certain power relation. But when you go further to participation, it's then basically totally different, because those groups to whom the policy is targeted, they are designing that program by themselves, in a cooperation, of course, with the hosting institutions, yeah, because the hosting institutions, this is their responsibility to work on addressing the vulnerabilities. But this is where there should be the golden middle, the combination, yeah, of integration as a two-way process, with, of course, having the integration systems institutionalized, but at the same time, they have to be flexible enough to address asymmetric power relations and to really, really engage refugees into, not just implementation phase, or not in the consultation phase, but in the co-creation and the co-design. And I think this is where actually we can definitely see the most effective integration outcome. This is the toolkit available in Estonian, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Karolis, for your significant contribution to this conference. And do you have any questions now specifically to Karolis?
Hi, I'm Gina from Switzerland, and I work in a community center where we do a lot of participatory work. Actually, it's the base of all our work, so I'm very happy to hear some of your insights. And what we often face in the community development is that, you know, the scale is clear of how to involve people, but actually it's often then conflicting with the framework that you have as an organization, the budget, interests, and so on. So that's actually where it gets interesting of how to involve people and not only listen to them, but also having an actual effect on their needs. So that's what we often see. And also the other issue is that many people do not even have the need to actually be so much a part of the whole process. So they rather would like to have a service instead of being part. And so when I look at your cards, I ask myself, how do you evaluate in this card where it's about the involving people, when you get 100%, how do you evaluate on this scale?
Well, answering to the first part of the question, you can just try to change your frameworks. It is as it is, because I mean, you know, as long as you will not change the frameworks, you will still be staying in the form of certain asymmetric power relations. Yeah, because, you know, I mean, for sure, it's very difficult to change the framework at the national and even local level in a municipality. But I mean, for the NGOs, for the grassroots movements, it's as simple as it is, because you're supposed to be flexible. That's about the grassroots movement. Yeah, I think I don't see here the big issue. Well, the other part I think is much more complicated, because I mean, you have a lot of models and the tools for that engagement and for that participation. Yeah, you can start from a very simple feedback and complaint mechanism that can really be anonymous and holistic, and for you to really inform your, you know, the decisions on the upcoming integration program. And we have a lot of guidelines on how to work on the feedback and complaint mechanism in a safe space, especially for the vulnerable groups as refugees. So that's the one part. But another part, I mean, you really have to advocate for that kind of approach as a part of the public policy setup. Yeah, you have a lot of integration councils in Danish cities. You have ethno advisory board at the national regional level in Finland. You have immigration dialogues in Finland organized by the Ministry of Interior. Yeah, so these are the tools that, in a very holistic way, engage refugee and migrant and other populations into the dialogue. Yeah, some of them they are informal, some of them they are very formal. Like ethno is organized by the Ministry of Justice in Finland, and this is really a great thing, because when the government is revising the integration policy, you use this ethno network to collect the feedback from the migrant communities, including refugee communities. Yeah, so there are plenty of those examples. There are city councils, intercultural councils. There are more formalized advisory boards at the regional level in Germany, yeah, in the German model. So we have a lot of those issues, but by building the policy, you know, you have to really think about what is the most feasible for you. And even if you're working for your own organization, you can just build as something which is a very small replication, or as Alex told, you know, the adaptation of that. So this is where we go, and I think that, you know, the evaluation of this is basically when you screen your available tools. So if you have the feedback and complaint mechanism, yeah, if you have people who are, you know, part of the co-implementation and co-design of services with a minority, refugee, migrant, whatever background, this is exactly the indicators that you would evaluate that this is something which is really good. And you are right. This is absolutely unnecessary to involve everyone, because many people, they even don't want to listen about that, yeah? So, but that tool, the holistic tool, helps you to really give the floor and give the chance for people to be engaged.